One.
Hello, my name is Autumn Pope. I am completing my exit presentation for educational leadership. Um, I am a graduate from Henderson State University 2 times, going on 3 now. I finished my bachelor's at Henderson. I also finished my MAT in special education at Henderson, and now I'm getting ready to complete my ed leadership degree here as well. I currently work in the Jacksonville North Pulaski School District. I've been there for 3 years as the resource teacher for Pinewood Elementary. So I serve students K through 5, and I love it. It's challenging and rewarding all at the same time and full of new experiences every time I turn around. So it has been a great, wonderful experience. I actually just got hired to work in a school in Florida. So I'll be making a move this summer to another state, and I'm excited about that adventure as well. It's not only a new state, but a new setting and in the school, and so I'm ready to expand on my abilities as a special education teacher, and then hopefully in the future expand on my expand with my ed leadership degree. And so let's just get started. For ELCC Standard 1.1, I chose the artifact of the Vision Walk when this was done with Dr. Jenkins in supervision. In this artifact, I worked with several stakeholders, several school employees, some stakeholders from the community, and even some past students at Pinewood, and just like brought in their experiences of what they had seen when they attended Pinewood, and what they had might have wished had gone differently or what they enjoyed about it. The biggest part of our vision walk and our vision for Pinewood was to instill a love of learning and a love of community within our school. In our community, we struggle with parental involvement quite a bit, or we did in the beginning, and so a great goal for Pinewood was to build on that, to enhance our parental involvement, enhance our community involvement, and also get our students involved in the community, because we know that it's a give and take situation. We can't expect our community to invest in us if we don't invest back. And so volunteering in the community, not just students, but staff as well. We also hope to develop school clubs, which is something we did do. And this just provides extra learning experiences within the school that aren't based on those core subject areas. We had, like a basketball club, cooking club, gardening, several different clubs, just a passion projects club, just different things to get the students involved and to help them realize that there's learning everywhere and learning can be fun. It doesn't have to come straight from a textbook. And the last part of our vision was to establish a PTO, because there hadn't been one at the school in years, and that is something that we have done. It took a little longer to get that one started because of the lack of parental involvement. But this year, we have an excellent PTO, and it is growing, and they are in the school and visible and making a great impact for our students and the teaching staff, and also working to get the community involved with us as well. So it's been a great experience, and I really feel like our vision is coming to fruition, and so that's a great feeling. Moving on to Standard 1.1, I chose my action research project from Dr. Darden's class for our action research class. This project was time-consuming and eye-opening, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful to have the experience of completing an action research project, but it was also wonderful to experience the growth of the students through this project, through the study. I chose to study the effects of LLI on 5th grade students in the RTI in the RTI process. LLI is leveled literacy interventions, and so it's a literacy intervention that takes a whole book approach to to reading and intervention with reading. So it focuses on all areas, phonemic awareness, phonics. There's a lot of text to picture correlations, high frequency words, lots of repetition to help students familiarize themselves with words and spelling patterns. And the growth that I saw within my 15 students within my target group was pretty amazing. These students had significantly low reading levels, and 73% of the group grew in their reading level based on developmental reading assessment, DRA. So based on the DRA levels and progress monitoring, 73% of my students grew. 4 of the group actually came within 1 year of closing the achievement gap in reading. So that was really excellent to see. The scores were great. The experience of watching these students grow and realizing that they're growing was even better, because they were taking risks, they were stepping out of their comfort zones, and they were trying. You would watch them in the classroom, and they were trying to do more. They felt confident in their reading abilities, and after spending 3 years with some of these students and seeing this boost of confidence, it's just it's a feeling and an experience that I will always hold near and dear to me. It was just a feel-good moment. So it was a great study, but it brought on a lot of passion and a lot of heart went into it, and so it was a great experience. Standard 1.3 for continual school improvement, I use the school improvement plan and SMART goals. That was also done with Dr. Jenkins in supervision. With this project, I worked alongside the leadership team at Pinewood, and we use needs assessment data to target our areas of weakness within the school. One being the low reading scores that are seen all throughout the school, and then also the chronic absenteeism. There was something that was a very big deal at our school for quite a while. I think this year we've really gotten it under control, and so that's great. It's great that these goals are being reached. Our last one was for disciplinary rates. When the district became JMPSD in 2016, when the district first started, we saw a lot of discipline in our school. Lots of students getting ISS and OSS, and it was just very disheartening. And so there were some goals created for strengthening these areas of weakness. Our goal for reading was to increase the number of students that were reading on grade level by 15% by May 2019. Was estimated at the time that 45% of the student population at Pinewood was reading on grade level, so more than half of them weren't. And through different interventions in the classroom and pulled out of the classroom, we have seen a lot of growth, and I'm hoping by the time all assessment scores are completed in May and data is analyzed that we have made that growth. And maybe if we didn't make the 15%, I'm pretty confident that we got really close to that. Our goal for in regards to the absenteeism was to reduce the number of students chronically absent by 15% by May 2019. And then for disciplinary goal was to reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions and in-school suspensions by 25% by May. While it just hit May, I don't have those final percentages in, but just being in the school and watching the growth that has been made the past 3 years, and this year alone especially, I feel like we have come very close to succeeding those goals. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of wonderful changes that I've been able to be part of and watch, and it's been a great experience. And it's great to have staff members that all expect the same things. They all want the same goals for their students and for the school. ELCC Standard 2.1 for school culture. I chose the culture survey. This was just a way for us to see how others viewed the culture of Pinewood Elementary. I can't take my views and my principal's views and expect that everyone else in the school building feels the same way. However, I was pretty excited to see that most of us did. We are a great team. And our strength was in relationships. There's just a true sense of community at Pinewood, and we all talk often about how we are a family, and so it's great to be a part of that, and it's great that so many people feel that way. Our weaknesses, based on the survey results, were in the area of processes, and that was placing blame on others when things don't go as planned. A lot of times we get a lot of flack or negative feedback from central office, from higher up in the district, and that's always disheartening when you have certain views for your school, but others don't agree. And so this is just one of those situations where you have to come back to the table, find a way, renegotiate, collaborate, and find a way to, meet in the middle and find common ground. And that's something I feel like every school district probably comes into contact with at one point or another. And it's just having that professionalism and patience to find ways to succeed for your school. In 2.2, I chose the artifact of the learner-centered schedule that was done in curriculum strategies with Dr. Weaver. This was a partner project, and we had to create a master schedule. With my partner for this project, we were not at the same school. He actually teaches in a middle school and I in an elementary school. However, in doing this project, we found that the needs of our schools were very similar. And the needs that we paid attention to in our schedule were the needs of both teachers and students. The need for PLC to be often and to be done with fidelity is very important. We need that collaboration with our teachers, not with just the teachers in our grade level, but with the teachers coming, with students below us and students above us, just that whole team collaboration so that we can do what's best for every student, not just the year that they're with us, but for the years to come. Also, we focus as for our students, we focused on increasing physical activity. We know that is it's very important. Far too often kids, they go home and they don't do much after that. They stay inside and they don't get a lot of physical activity. And for mental health reasons, for physical health reasons, the increase in physical activity we feel is necessary in a school, especially in an elementary setting. We also wanted to focus on mental health. Mental health in our youth is a very apparent issue, and it's one that seems to be growing constantly, or there's more attention being paid to it now in news outlets than has been in the past. The other area we wanted to focus on in our schedule was creating room for reading interventions so that we could focus on improving the reading of all students. In doing this and creating this schedule, we had to follow state-mandated legal rules and legal obligations, certain core classes that you have to have, allowing teachers adequate amount of plan time, duty schedules, that type of thing. And then there was the obvious need for collaboration. This was a hard task. It was difficult to create a schedule for an entire school, and it's not something that one or even two people should have to do alone. It's something where you need the input from various members in order to help it to create a schedule that flows nicely and gives the students what they need, gives the teachers what they need, that type of thing. I'm sorry. No, I didn't. Excuse me. For standard 2.4, I chose the educator interviews about software programs used in schools, and this was a class taken with Mr. Benton, Technology for School Leaders. I'm sorry. In this class, I interviewed several teachers about the software programs that they use in their classrooms. In order to implement software, a teacher has to be knowledgeable of it. So it was a matter of our teachers having to teach themselves how to use these programs. Are the districts or the school buildings offering proper PD to help teachers ensure that they are using these programs effectively? You have to be knowledgeable as an educator in what you're implementing in your classroom. You need to know how to use it in order for it to effectively work and to enhance learning. Most of the teachers talked about the use of Google Suite. Some of our teachers use Google Classroom, which is great, but at an elementary level, there is still there's not as much technology integration yet. And I say yet because I do feel like in the future there will be more and more. But the use of Google Suite is very popular within our school. It makes sharing among staff very easy, and that's great for collecting data and sharing it. We also use technology intervention programs. We use Dreambox for math. We also use Edgenuity this year, which focuses on, it actually takes the MAP scores from students, takes their MAP scores and applies those scores into an individualized program. So it focuses on the needs of the learning needs of the students based on their MAP data, and which is really cool. So it's, in using this, if used effectively, it is hoped by, the next interim, students will improve in those areas of weakness. For 3.2, effectively using human, physical, and technology resources to manage school operations, I chose the coding assignment done in school finance with Dr. Jenkins. This was difficult. This was a side of ed leadership that I was not prepared for, and I can say that honestly, and somewhat shamefully, I guess, but I was not prepared for it. It was difficult, but it was also very eye-opening. There's more to just making a purchase and keeping that receipt and turning it into central office. All of your monies that are given to a school come from a certain fund and a certain operation, and all of the money is used for certain things, specific things, and it comes from specific places, and it's very important that money is used correctly. Spending should be viewed by multiple people, especially large purchases. I don't feel like a principal, while you may be the leader in your school, I don't feel like a principal should make any large purchases without some communication and collaboration among other staff members, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page, that y'all feel like spending this money on this certain program or this professional development or these technology pieces. Is it efficient? Is it going to positively impact the learning of our students? And it's just something that should be a team decision. And when spending the money, you want to make sure when you have your secretaries and staff that often handle the coding of spending money, you want to make sure that these members are qualified and trustworthy, because when dealing with money, essentially as a principal, it's all going to come back on you if something goes wrong. And so you want to make sure that you have trustworthy staff on hand when dealing with spending. For standard 3.4, this deals with distributed leadership. I chose the continuous improvement project, focusing on the Deming cycle. This was done in organizational leadership with Dr. Weaver. This The Deming cycle focuses on steps of plan, do, check, and action. And it's just a continuous cycle so that essentially improvement's continuous. You start with your plan of, what you make a plan for improvement. What do we need to do differently in our school? Like what do we need to improve upon? You make that plan, then you do it. You do what the plan entails. You check the data to make sure that the plan is running efficiently, and then at the end you come together and you act and you look at this data and you say, okay, this is great, or this wasn't great, but even still, what can I do now to improve even more? What can I do better? So that's the focus of the Deming cycle. You may be doing things great, but what can you do better? Because there's always more. There's always better. There's always more. There's always something else we can do. And this is not something that just the principal should be in charge of. This is a team effort. You need lots of people on board. You need your whole staff on board in most cases. Your principal can't do it all. You should all be focused on the same needs and coming together and collaborating on how you can do something better. Moving you on to 3.5. I chose the PLC processes of the Arkansas Department of Education, and this assignment was from the School Community Resources and Relationships class with Mr. Benton. All schools have PLCs. You have those learning communities, and the point of them is to keep that school-wide focus on growth and learning. But all PLCs are different. They're building specific. They focus on what is needed for your school. What do the students in your school need? How can we make their learning experiences better? And we all have different needs. We all have different goals. There are 4 guiding questions when implementing our PLCs. We need to focus on what we want our students to know. How are we going to know when they've learned something? And what do we do if they're not learning? Like, if they aren't grasping what we're teaching, how do we make them understand? How do we help them learn? And then once they do learn, what's next? What do we do next? Yes, they've learned it. How do we enhance it? Where do we go from here? How do we build on that learning and help them to continue to make growth? The 3 elements of the PLC, as mentioned by DeFore, to focus on learning. Your principal as a principal, you should always find ways to discuss student learning and approaches with teachers. Always make time to discuss, what's going on in your classroom. What are you seeing? What's working? What's not working? How can I help you make changes? Or how can I find somebody who can help you? The collaborative culture. Members of the PLC should be working toward a common goal. You should have that common ground, have those shared goals, and have shared ideas of how to reach those goals. And then results-oriented thinking. So this focuses on the data. You have to look at the data. The data doesn't lie. And the results of our data should be a direct effect of our actions as educators and what we're doing in our classrooms, not just what we had planned to do. They should show what we are doing. Moving on to 4.1. I chose coffee with the principal, so this was part of my job shadowing, and this was actually part of my internship class. Although I feel like throughout the whole ed leadership course, I've done a lot of job shadowing, but this was a great experience. Coffee with the principal was just a real low-key way of having, I say, regular, normal conversation with several family members and community members. It was open to the public, where anyone from the community could come to the school and just have coffee and a light breakfast with the principal. And while doing this, you set a very neutralized tone, and everyone was able to share their ideas for growth and to discuss, the needs that parents and community members, what they see as needs for our students or needs for our school. And it's great to get their perspective, from the outside looking in, because what we see in our building every day and we may think is going great, from the outside, they may not be seeing that. So how do we make sure that the community and that parents are seeing the same progress that we see? And if there are areas we're not seeing progress in, then how do we get the help from our parents and community members to help us make these progresses? So it was just a great experience just to have just normal conversation, and it was a judgment-free zone, and I got to take lead on it, and it was a great experience, and helped me to see the kind of principal that I want to be one day. I want to be someone that is transparent and open-minded, and I want to be able to make sure that my community knows where my heart lies as far as in the school and as far as making sure students succeed. On 4.2, I chose the school community profile. This was done in the school community resources and relationships course with Mr. Benton. So JMPSD is a very unique situation. We broke apart from PCSSD in 2016. I've actually been with the district since they became an independent district. And since that break apart, the whole district as a whole has worked really hard on improving the name for the school and its educational mission. There were a lot of struggles that came with separating from PCSSD. Before the split, it was evident that the community was not involved in the schools. You would hear many times how members of the community or parents of children in the schools would say that in Jacksonville they felt like they were a stepchild, and you would even hear teachers say that they felt like Jacksonville was a stepchild and they didn't get the things that they needed like other Little Rock schools. And so it's disheartening. Yes, it's disheartening, but from there's only room for improvement, and that's something the district has been working on. And in doing that, you have to look at the demographic data of the area. You have to look at the academic needs for these students. We're in an area in Jacksonville with a high percentage of our families are of low socioeconomic status, and that plays a lot upon the educational experiences of children. And that when there's a lack of involvement in education on the home front, that can be a struggle for educators to find ways to change these views and help students become engaged in learning and help their parents become engaged in their students' learning. We looked at current assessment data and viewed those obvious struggles. As I mentioned before, reading is a huge struggle district-wide, and so you want to make those plans at both the district and the building levels of how we're going to improve on these needs and how you're going to involve the community to help improve on these needs. For 4.3, I chose Enhancing Community Involvement Project. This was another one of Mr. Benton's classes. This one talks about the 11 steps for enhancing parental and community involvement. These steps, they basically involve reaching out and eliminating all those communication barriers between the school and the community, or the school and families. And you find ways to get parents involved, and not only get them involved once, but keep them involved, get the community involved more than one time, help it be continuous involvement. And a great way of doing that is to be involved with your community as well. If your school is involved with the community, then in return they're going to want to be involved with you. So community outreach starts within our schools. Some of the ideas for building that community outreach, we talked about programs for taking stands on poverty, getting assistance from the churches within the city, having a career week where different businesses come in, different people come in. These students get to see all of these career options out there, and and hopefully in turn trigger them to want to do well in school so that they can learn, and when they grow up, they can do these great things too. Having volunteers come in from the community to help students with reading. When students see that adults love reading or other people love reading, maybe in their minds they're going to think, well, I need to love reading too. Let me try harder. Let me work harder to improve my reading. And then we also talked about community gardens, and this was a way to also take a stand on poverty. It was also a great way to just get students and parents and other community members just involved in working together on this one project that could essentially, feed many, and it's just a great learning experience. For 5.1, I chose a project I did in educational law with Dr. Cothran, focusing on the rights of students with disabilities. As a special education teacher, obviously ensuring that a school is held accountable for the success of every child is something that it's not just my job, but it's near and dear to my heart. You want to see every student succeed, and when you work so closely with students that struggle to succeed, it does become a passion, and you want to make sure you're doing everything you can to see these students succeed, but you also want to ensure that everybody else is doing everything they can to make sure that these students are getting what they need in the classrooms. And so this project really focused on the different laws and just the background of how these laws came into place, from Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954, which, was the segregated education, and how that stopped, to Mills versus Board of Education, which expanded on Park and, adopted plans for students with disabilities, and bringing them into the schools. And then, of course, focusing on IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities and Education Act. This is one that was started in 1990, and it has just continued to grow, and there have been amendments, in 1997, amendments in 2004, but it just continues to grow in order to meet the needs of students with disabilities, to ensure that they are being provided with a free and appropriate public education, that they're getting everything they need to help them succeed in the educational environment. And so there are lots of legalities, and I could go on and on for days, but this is just a project that's important to me, and I feel like oftentimes it's easy to let some of these legalities slip through the cracks, so people don't realize that they're maybe not giving students everything they need in order to learn in the classroom. So, good project, good laws. Everybody should pay attention. And moving on to 5.2, I chose the Code of Ethics project, also done in Ed Law with Dr. Cothran. This is very important. It's very important for all teachers and administrators, to follow this code of ethics set forth for educators within their schools. You need to, as a leader, a building leader, you need to hold your staff accountable to these ethics. And you can't do that if you can do that. You can't do it effectively if you don't make certain that your staff members are aware of these codes of ethics. So it's more than handing them a piece of paper when they're hired saying, I pledge to abide by the code of ethics for educators. It's making sure they understand them. We can sign our lives away on paperwork all day long, but do you understand what you're signing? So as a future administrator, I will be sure that all my staff are taught the code of ethics, or revise on the code of ethics at the beginning of every school year, just to ensure that they are aware, and as needed, if reminders are needed throughout the school year, then that's what you do. But these codes of ethics are put into place for a reason. For ELCC Standard 5.4, I did the student policy handbook review. This was done in Ed Law as well, just understanding the moral and legal consequences of decisions made in the school. So the policies of a school are expected to be maintained while students are on school grounds. At any time. It could be during the school day, at a school supervised activity, function, or event, or even for school transportation. The standards of conduct for JMPSD are broken down into 4 major categories of infractions. So you have level 1, 2, and 3, and 4 infractions. And level 1 infractions being minimal, and then level 4 infractions, of course, being the worst. In order to ensure that these policies are being set forth throughout the schools, you have to follow your handbook. You have to make sure that disciplinary matters are followed effectively, and that's why you have your handbook. It takes one time for a student to be disciplined incorrectly or too harshly, and a parent to come back and really just bite you on it because you didn't follow the policy set forth. Parents get these handbooks too, and if a parent ever feels like their child was disciplined inappropriately, you can guarantee that they're going to say something to you about it. So make sure you're following the rules set forth. Within the schools, we use PBIS, so that's Positive Behavioral Intervention and Supports, and these just give schools plans for dealing with discipline and helping to decrease the amount of discipline seen within the school. So having plans, having expectations known to students will, hopefully cut down on the number of infractions seen within your school district or in your building, and thus cut down on any fears of handling disciplinary situations wrong. For 6.1, I chose building relationships with community and stakeholders. This was done in a class with Mr. Benton. It talks about building relationships with community and stakeholders, 10 key strategies to building these effective relationships. Agreeing on core values, listening to the community. It's not them just listening to you. You have to listen back. Using the data that you collect strategically and building from that, making your improvements based on the data that you've seen, based on the needs of the school. Building relationships with families that are linked to learning. It's not just a, hey, how you doing in the car line and a pretty smile every morning. Take time. Help families know how they can help with learning. A lot of times they don't know. They're unsure. Education is always changing. The way we teach is constantly changing, and so the way that our parents were taught is not always the way we're teaching in our classrooms, and that's something that brings on a lot of confusion. And we also need to address those cultural differences throughout our community, throughout our school building, because those can come into play with expectations for learning. It also talks about this project we also talked about the 3 categories of programs to utilize these strategies, focusing on, there are strategies, the categories for focusing on community and family and community programs, and then programs to engage family members, and then the wraparound social and community programs. Those focus on getting students in the community involved together. This could be something as simple as like helping families know about healthcare in the community or free learning resources in the community, just getting them involved as a whole. And for the last one, for standard 6.3, I chose the project on understanding the powers and duties of the school board, and experience with attending some school board meetings, and this was from Ed Law with Dr. Cothran. So the school boards, they're the policy making body for public schools, and you have your state school boards, then you have their state school board or state board, and then your local school boards. But they're the policy making body, and they help regulate the guidelines for the school and what goes on. As far as the state level, they set the statewide curriculum, what we have to teach in our schools, and they set graduation requirements and different accreditation standards. At the local level, this is where your community gets involved. This community engagement. These are just community members who feel passionate about their school district and what it's done, and passionate about the children in the community and their need to succeed. They also handle, the financial budgeting and procedures and ensuring that the school districts comply with federal and state laws. So all decisions made by the local school board encompass the concept of improving educational opportunities for students. So that's their focus. Their focus is truly the needs of the students and how we can continue to improve on their learning. So sometimes we may not feel that they're always on our side, but we always have to remember that they are on the side of every child in our community. And so that's a very important concept to make sure you grasp, even in times of frustration. And just to wrap it up, this whole experience has been so rewarding. It has been wonderful and stressful, and there have been tears of stress and tears of joy, and I've made great relationships, both within Henderson and within my community through all the projects and things that I've had to do as part of this Ed Leadership program. The instructors have been wonderful, and I feel like they are people that 5 years from now, if I had a question, I could shoot them an email or a phone call, and they would be there to assist me in any way possible, and that's a great feeling. But I'm finishing this program with confidence in my leadership skills, my collaboration skills, knowledge of educational laws and policies that I didn't even know existed before, and knowing how to use data and use it in regards of what's best for our children, and just the importance of community. I mean, I always knew that community was important, but I don't think that I realized how important they are and how important it is to have the community and have parents on our side in order to do what is best for each and every student in our buildings. Anyway, that brings me to an end. Thank you all, and see you at graduation.